Hey guys, Timothy Roberts here. In this video, we're going to go even deeper into the Foundation Series cymbals that I recently released. Alright, so if you watched the last video that I posted on the Foundation Series, you probably saw that I was dealing with the prototypes, the very first Foundation ride that really locked in, okay, this is the direction, and then another cymbal that kind of captures a little bit more of the heavier side of those cymbals. And in this video, I want to go into more of the production run, the cymbals that are going to be more common to what you'll see as a part of this series moving forward. I'll show you these three cymbals that I have in front of me. Two of them are Jonathan's cymbals. That are the ones he was like, yes, this is the vibe, this is what I'm looking for. And we'll talk a little bit more about cymbal specs. Really, it's going to be kind of hard to concisely describe it, but we're talking about cymbals that are very versatile and functional. They get the job done on the gig, they cut through louder music, and they have a good amount of control. So we're going to talk about the right kind of cymbal for certain kinds of gigs, and the benefits and drawbacks to a cymbal like these, which are the new Foundation Series. So let's dive in now. All right, so first up, I have a 21 on my left. I got a 22 in the main position and another 21 on my far right. These are all medium to medium light cymbals. They have an unlathed crust on top that is hefty. I haven't cut through, haven't done any scratch passes or anything like that. There's a little bit of burnishing on them, as you can see maybe, which is just blunt lathing with a rounded tool. It doesn't cut material, but it kind of enforces stiffness into the alloy. And so these cymbals are meant to be a balance between expressive, nuanced, and a little bit more airy sounds with really dry, controlled, and clear sounds. It's kind of a marriage of those two. And they're very interesting. So let's check out how they sound now. right, so as you can hear, they are certainly controlled. They've got a little bit of a hint of grit to them, just a hint of smokiness and a little bit of a growl to them, especially on this one on the far right. It's got a little bit of an angry thing happening, which to me is just that's what makes a cymbal interesting. I have said on other videos that I don't typically like unlathed cymbals because they have this, the dry character is great, but with the dry character comes a little bit of a one-dimensional, boring sound, to my ear at least. And so the goal with these cymbals is to give you the dryness and the smokiness that you can only really get from an unlathed crust, but get that with the infusion of a little bit more breath and airiness, complexity, nuance, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm really aiming to kind of create the kind of dry, unlathed cymbal that I would love to play. And these cymbals they all have strong bells. You know, you can really lay into that bell and get a nice solid sound. It's going to be very separated. It's not going to sound super integrated. And that's really important for the kind of gigs that Jonathan plays and the kind of gigs that a lot of drummers play. They need something that's going to cut. And a lot of us indie cymbalsmiths like to make really light, airy, jazzy cymbals, and those cymbals just fall apart. They totally break apart when you're really trying to dig in, especially if you're in like a big band situation, a rock and roll situation, funk situation. You know, those cymbals are not going to cut through the mix and be heard clearly in the audience perspective. Those cymbals are wonderful to play behind them because they just give you all this low pitch warmth, and they're not very abrasive to the ear. But as drummers, we have to think about how our sounds are translating. So this cymbal series is really about giving you control, giving you dryness, but also cut and clarity. Now, a drawback. So I want to talk about a drawback to this kind of cymbal. If you're really looking for a versatile cymbal that's loud, that you can say use in a rock group, the unlathed crust is gonna, like I said, it's gonna make the cymbal drier. It's not gonna give it as much sustain. And sometimes sustain is what you want, and that high-end sparkle is what you want to be able to cut through the mix. So this kind of cymbal might not be the right cymbal for you if you play in a rock and roll band and you want to be crashing on your cymbal and you want the sustain to carry through to the next crash. You know, these cymbals are almost going to die before you get to that next hit. And so this is the kind of cymbal that is very versatile for situations where you want cut and control. If you want cut and volume and sustain, you would want to go with one of my other series of cymbals that are fully lathed, and you would want to ask me to make it a couple 100 grams heavier. That's really what we've got going on here. Is we've got an issue where a lot of indie cymbalsmiths are not making cymbals heavy enough for a lot of gigging drummers. So I've been making a lot more cymbals lately that are 200, 300, 400 grams heavier than the cymbals I used to make all the time. I've just balanced things out a little bit so that we have more. I have more options for the modern drummers. So one other thing I want to mention is that these cymbals here, they have a different alloy than the alloy that I've been using for most of my cymbal smithing career. It's a new foundry that I'm working with, and they are offering blanks that are giving me a different character. So the cymbals I've demoed for you here are not Brazilian, and they are not Turkish. The Brazilian blanks are my go-to blank for most of the cymbals that I make, and they have just a wonderful character to them. And these foundation rides will be offered with the Brazilian bronze. And that is like this cymbal right here. So this is a cymbal very closely modeled after the original prototype that Jonathan owns, the 24-inch that you saw in the last video. And this cymbal has a different character. It has more air to it. It's got more shimmer and wash to it, and it's a little bit more open. So this is going to be something that also falls within the Foundation series. Even though for the most part, this bronze here that comes from my new supplier is going to be the bronze that I go to for the Foundation series. You can see it's darker looking, which I won't get too into the weeds with it, but the darker looking finish is it's a blank that does not have the salt wash, and the salt wash kind of knocks back some of the crust, and it gives you more of a brown color like this as opposed to a black color. And so without the salt wash, that crust is actually heavier, and the heavier crust gives you even more control and more articulation. So I'll play this cymbal for you right here. I'll show you a clip behind it as well, and you'll kind of get a sense for the more airy, nuanced side of the Foundation series. All right, that's the video. Please let me know in the comments below what you think of this new series. These cymbals are available. I'm going to be dropping Foundation cymbals in upcoming batches that come about once every 3 weeks or once a month to the website, but you can also commission me to make one of these cymbals. The cool thing about my commission process is you go on the website, reveriedrums.com, you place an order for a commission, and then I email you and we discuss exactly what you want for the project. So if you say, love the 22 here, and you like the dryness, you like all of it, but you want it to be thinner and you want there to be some lathing on top to open a little bit more life, we can get into all the kind of intricacies and nuances with commissions when it comes to these cymbals. So you can go to, like I said, reveriedrums.com and hit the Timothy Roberts tab, and you'll see a cymbal commission form where you can place an order. But you're going to be seeing a lot more of these cymbals in the future, as well as a lot more cymbals from my Landmark, my Prism, my Tributary, and my Labyrinth series. Those cymbals, you're going to start seeing more of those that are coming in at heavier weights. And that's just because I'm kind of entering a new phase of my cymbal making journey where I'm not only making cymbals for jazz drummers. I want to make cymbals for everybody. And I want to make the most functional cymbals I can. And a thin 22 that weighs 2,300 grams is just not going to cut it for a guy that plays in a rock band. So you'll still, don't worry, if you love the jazz stuff, I'm going to be making tons of jazz cymbals from here until I can't swing a hammer anymore. But we're going to also be making a lot more of these cymbals that have the body that's necessary for gigging drummers. So, like I said, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe and the bell if you want notifications, and keep an eye out for the next video. My name is Timothy Roberts. Thanks for watching.
But even listening to some like old jazz records, like when did that start? Because I listen to some stuff and it sounds like a chunk. It feels solid. It doesn't feel like floaty and like airy. Like when Mike Clark came through for the master class, remember he was talking about like that solid stick sound, and this is not like playing at it, but just getting those. And it was like that stuck with me for such a long time. It's like that's so true.
Yes.
Like there are so many drummers that sort of do this sort of dainty kind of dance.
Yeah.
And he just comes from a different era where it's just
bit.
like, this is it right here.
Right.
And like
you just said it. You've stepped in it a little bit, because I'm learning. You know, I've learned that I was wrong about cymbals. Like a couple of years ago, I had this big moment of realizing I hit a wall. I was like, I am wrong about this. Because if you listen to Tony, if you listen to Elvin, if you listen to Higgins, all that stuff in the 60s and earlier, like they're not playing airy cymbals. They're playing like bright, thick, like cymbals that have a lot of body that they can dig into. Us drummers are listening to the recording with all of the recording technology of the day, and you know, it was maybe mic'd, you know, it might have been mic'd out front and the cymbal was carrying 10 feet before it even hit the mic, you know, and so we're hearing this sound that to us, obviously we're hearing the player, that's probably first, we're hearing the skill of the player, but we're also hearing this sound that is translating to us as light and airy. But in the room, when you're sitting behind that cymbal, it's not.
Right.
And so that's where I'm coming to. All of my cymbals have gotten heavier. You know, I still put out thin cymbals, but I've increased the weights about 100 to 200 to 300 grams on average from where I was 3 years ago. And that's something we all need to learn, because you know we're all just playing the cymbal behind. You know, not a lot of us makers are actually out gigging a lot. To be able to have that feedback from the bass player or the sax player to say like, hey, that cymbal's kind of getting lost under my solo. What, you know, can we do something about that? But we're, you know, which gets into drum rim cymbals versus gig cymbals, because we like to hear that nice airy, dancey kind of thing when we're sitting behind the kit. But you know, it's always just perspective and knowing how stuff translates. So that's where the Foundation series, the intent behind it is like really solid, beefy cymbals that get the job done with just enough color and intrigue to make them just a delight to play. That's my like ultimate goal with it. And obviously working with you to get there has been awesome. So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that you've been sort of treating this like an interview, and I've just been talking.
Yeah, I know, right? I kind of morphed it into.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now we're talking about this ride cymbal and this Foundation thing.